My ex-husband went to the bank every Tuesday at exactly 2 p.m. Not usually. Not most weeks. Every Tuesday. For 33 years. Rain, heat, holidays, even weeks when he could barely walk without wincing. If he was sick, he still went. If he was angry, he went even faster. If we had plans, the plans moved. Tuesday at 2 didn't. And here's what made it creepier. He never acted like it was a big deal. If you're into stories like this, tap like, subscribe, and type interested in the comments. I'll give you a cookie. If I asked, he'd give me the same calm answer, the same half smile like I was a child asking why the sky is blue. Just handling something. Or, if he felt generous. Just keeping things in order. That was always his thing, even when we were married. He loved the idea of being the one who kept things stable. The one who had the passwords. The one who made sure the bills were paid. The one who didn't need help, didn't need questions, didn't need anyone looking too closely. I used to tell myself it was responsible. Because when someone repeats a ritual for decades, you don't automatically think secret. You think discipline. You think routine. You think, this is just who he is. But looking back now, it wasn't discipline. It was compulsion. Because normal people don't protect a Tuesday like it's sacred. Normal people don't build their life around a 2 o'clock appointment they refuse to explain. And the worst part is, I didn't push. Not because I was weak. Because he trained everyone around him to accept the fog. To accept the don't worry about it. To accept the little locked door in the middle of the marriage that you're not supposed to open. I remember one Tuesday, maybe 15 years in, when I suggested we take a spontaneous drive to the coast. It was beautiful outside. We had nothing else going on. I thought it would be romantic. He looked at me like I'd suggested we burn the house down. Can't today, he said, already reaching for his keys. Why not? I have something. What's something? That smile again. Patient. Patronizing. Just something I need to take care of. And then he left. I sat there in the kitchen, staring at the clock, realizing I'd just been dismissed by a Tuesday. Not by another woman. Not by work. By a clock and a building and a routine that mattered more than I did. That's when the questions started creeping in. What was he doing there every single week for over 3 decades? Why couldn't he miss one Tuesday? Why couldn't anyone come with him? Why did he get defensive the one time I offered to go along? It's boring bank stuff, he'd said, voice tight. You'd hate it. But here's the thing about secrets, they don't stay still. They grow. They take up space. They change the air in the room. And after a while, you start noticing other things. The way he'd come home from those Tuesday trips just a little bit lighter. A little bit relieved. Like he'd just confessed something to someone who wasn't me. The way he'd guard his phone on Tuesday afternoons, even though he was never possessive about it any other day. The way he'd get irritable if I scheduled anything that even brushed up against that time slot. It wasn't about the bank. It was about control. About having one part of his life that belonged only to him, that no one could touch, question, or invade. And I'm telling you this up front because if you've ever been with someone who keeps one part of their life locked away, this is how it starts. Not with screaming. Not with obvious lies. With a routine that looks harmless, until the day it isn't. With a boundary that seems reasonable, until you realize it's a wall. With a person who seems dependable, until you understand that dependability was just another word for inflexible, unyielding, and completely unavailable. I never did find out what he was really doing on those Tuesdays. Maybe it was exactly what he said. Maybe it was something darker. Maybe it doesn't even matter anymore. What matters is this: I spent 33 years married to a man who had a life I wasn't allowed to see. And I let it happen because I mistook secrecy for privacy, and rigidity for strength. If someone in your life has a routine they refuse to explain, comment, "I see it." I'm serious. Because the ritual is never the real story. The reason is. Here's what matters, and I need to be clear about this from the start. He wasn't my husband anymore. By the time he died, he was my ex-husband. We had been divorced for years, but that Tuesday ritual never stopped. Same bank. Same time. Same silence. Even after the marriage ended, that part of his life stayed locked. And that should have told me something. Because divorce is supposed to untangle things. Money. Responsibility. Control. But with him, the separation was mostly emotional, not structural. He still handled his systems. He still talked like everything was under control. He still acted like the adult in the room, the one who knew better, the one who didn't need oversight. And I let myself believe that whatever he was doing on Tuesdays no longer had anything to do with me. That was my mistake. Because some people don't stop controlling when a marriage ends. They just move the control into places you can't see anymore. At the time, I told myself this was freedom. No more arguing about finances. No more asking questions that annoyed him. No more feeling like I needed permission to exist. What I didn't realize was that silence doesn't mean safety. It just means you've stopped looking. And when someone has been hiding something for decades, distance doesn't make it disappear. It just delays the moment you find out what it was really costing you. The divorce papers were signed on a Thursday. I remember because it was raining, and the lawyer's office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. He sat across from me at that long wooden table, pen in hand, signing his name with the same steady confidence he brought to everything else. No emotion. No hesitation. Just another transaction to complete. "You'll be fine," he told me as we walked out. Not unkindly. Just factually. Like he was informing me of the weather. And for a while, I believed him. Because the marriage was over, and that meant we were done, right? Separate lives. Separate accounts. Separate futures. Except we weren't separate. Not really. There were still joint accounts we hadn't closed. Still properties with both our names on the paperwork. Still investments he'd set up years ago that I'd signed off on without really understanding them. "I'll handle the cleanup," he said when I brought it up. "It's complicated. Trust me, you don't want to deal with it." And there it was again. That phrase. Trust me. The same words he'd used for 3 decades to keep me from asking too many questions. The same tone that made me feel like I was being difficult just for wanting clarity. So I let him handle it. I let him keep his systems, his Tuesday appointments, his private rituals that had nothing to do with me anymore. I moved into a smaller place. Started rebuilding. Started learning how to make decisions without checking with someone first. And for a while, it felt like freedom. Until the day I got the call. He was gone. Heart attack. Sudden. No warning. And just like that, all those things he'd been handling became my problem. Because here's what they don't tell you about divorce: it doesn't erase history. It doesn't delete your name from documents you signed 15 years ago. It doesn't untangle decades of financial decisions made by someone who never explained them. And it definitely doesn't protect you from the consequences of secrets you didn't even know existed. I didn't know it yet, but even as an ex-wife, my name was still attached to his secrets. To accounts I'd forgotten about. To debts I didn't know we had. To arrangements he'd made without ever consulting me, assuming he'd have time to clean them up later. But later never came. And death didn't untangle them. It exposed them. Within weeks, I was getting calls from banks I didn't recognize. Letters from lawyers about estates and probate. Notices about accounts that were overdrawn, properties that were underwater, obligations that were now, somehow, partially mine. But we were divorced, I kept saying. Yes, they'd reply. But your name is still on this. And that's when I understood. Divorce had ended the relationship. But it hadn't ended the connection. Because he never fully let go. He never fully separated our lives. He kept control over the parts that mattered, the money, the accounts, the legal ties, while letting me believe I was free. And now, standing in the wreckage of his carefully constructed systems, I realized the truth. I had never been free. I had just been looking the other way. If you've ever learned the hard way that separation doesn't always mean freedom, comment, still connected. Because sometimes the hardest lesson isn't that someone lied to you. It's that they never actually let you go. He died on a Tuesday. Of course he did. I remember noticing that detail before anything else, like my brain grabbed onto it because it was familiar, because it made sense in a moment where nothing else did. The call came in the middle of the afternoon. Short. Clinical. A stranger's voice telling me there had been a collapse, that it was sudden, that there was nothing anyone could do. No long goodbye. No last conversation. No moment of clarity or apology. Just, done. People assume death brings closure. That it wraps things up, softens the sharp edges, gives you answers you didn't get in life. It doesn't. Sometimes it freezes everything exactly where it is. I didn't cry right away. That confused people. They mistook it for strength or shock, but it was neither. What I felt was something quieter and harder to admit. Relief. Not because I wanted him gone. Not because I hated him. But because the tension I'd lived with for years finally went silent. No more guarded conversations. No more half answers. No more Tuesdays hanging over the week like a closed door I wasn't allowed to open. I thought that was the end of it. I thought death had sealed the vault. I was wrong. The funeral was small. Respectful. People said the usual things you say when someone dies suddenly and relatively young. They talked about how responsible he was, how organized, how he always seemed to have everything under control. I nodded and thanked them, numb to the irony. Because yes, he had control. So much control that even in death, he was still holding all the cards. I went through the motions that week. Made arrangements. Signed paperwork. Sorted through mail that kept arriving at his apartment, bills and notices and subscription renewals for a life that no longer existed. Most of it was mundane. Expected. But then there were the envelopes from the bank. Not one. Several. all from the same branch he'd visited every Tuesday for 33 years. I opened the first one standing in his kitchen, surrounded by the smell of coffee he'd never finished and newspapers he'd never read. The letter was formal, professional, and completely incomprehensible. It referenced accounts I didn't recognize, mentioned outstanding obligations, and co-signer responsibilities, and immediate attention required. My name was on it. Not as a notification. As a party. I read it 3 times before the words started to connect. Then I opened the second letter. Then the third. Each one worse than the last. Each one revealing another layer of something he'd built without telling me, something he'd maintained every Tuesday at 2 p.m. while I went on believing we were finally separate. There were loans. Accounts with negative balances. Investment vehicles that had collapsed years ago but were still generating fees and penalties. Lines of credit opened in both our names that I'd never approved but had apparently signed for at some point during the marriage when he put a stack of papers in front of me and said, "Just routine stuff, sign here." I felt my legs go weak. Not from grief. From rage. Because 3 days after his death, the bank reminded me that whatever he'd been protecting every Tuesday at 2 p.m. was still very much alive. And it still had my name on it. I called the bank the next morning. Asked to speak to someone, anyone, who could explain what I was looking at. They transferred me 4 times before I got someone who actually knew his name. "Yes," the woman said, her voice carefully neutral. Mr. _______ was a longtime client. He came in regularly. "Every Tuesday," I said. A pause. "Yes. Every Tuesday." What was he doing? Another pause, longer this time. "I'm not at liberty to discuss specific transactions without proper authorization. I'm his ex-wife. My name is on half these accounts. I think that counts as authorization. Ma'am, I understand this is difficult, but..." What was he doing every Tuesday for 33 years? Silence. Then, finally, managing obligations. What obligations? "I really think you should speak with an estate attorney, ma'am. This is beyond what I can discuss over the phone." And that's when I understood. It wasn't one thing. It was a system. A carefully constructed web of financial arrangements that he'd been maintaining, adjusting, and hiding for decades. Some of it legal. Some of it questionable. All of it designed to stay invisible as long as he was alive to manage it. But now he was gone. And the system didn't die with him. It transferred. To me. Because my name was still there, buried in paperwork from 1998, from 2003, from 2011. Signatures I'd given without reading. Approvals I'd granted because he told me it was just routine, and I trusted him. I sat in that apartment for hours, surrounded by letters and statements and legal documents that felt like they were written in a foreign language. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. He didn't die with unfinished business. He died in the middle of it. On a Tuesday. At the bank. Right where he'd always been. If someone passed before you ever got the answers you deserved, comment, "No closure." Because some people don't leave you with memories. They leave you with consequences. And sometimes, the worst part isn't that they're gone. It's that you're still dealing with who they were. The letter arrived 3 days after the funeral. Plain white envelope. Typed address. No emotion. No explanation. Just my name. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Condolence mail. Some automated system doing what systems do when someone dies. I almost tossed it on the counter unopened. I'm glad I didn't. Inside was a single page from the bank he'd gone to every Tuesday for 33 years. Not a sympathy note. Not a form letter. A notice. It informed me that I was listed as a secondary holder on a safe deposit box. That the lease had been prepaid. That due to my ex-husband's death, I was now eligible to access it. I read it twice. Then a third time, slower. Because here's the thing. I didn't know about a safe deposit box. Not when we were married. Not after the divorce. Not ever. And yet, somehow, my name was still attached to it. Suddenly, every Tuesday afternoon snapped into focus. The precision. The obsession. The way nothing ever interfered with that appointment. This wasn't about handling something. This was about guarding something. My hands started shaking. Not from fear exactly, but from something closer to recognition. Like my body understood before my brain did that I was about to learn something I couldn't unlearn. I thought back to all those years. All those Tuesdays. All those times I'd asked and been shut down with that patient, condescending smile. Just keeping things in order. What things? What order? And why did it require a trip to the bank every single week for 3 decades? You don't visit a safe deposit box every Tuesday unless what's inside needs constant attention. Constant updating. Constant management. Unless it's alive in some way. Unless it's growing. I sat there with that letter in my hand, and I felt something shift inside me. The relief I'd felt when he died evaporated, replaced by something darker and more urgent. Dread. Because I suddenly understood that his death hadn't ended anything. It had just forced his hand. Whatever he'd been protecting, whatever he'd been maintaining every Tuesday at 2 p.m., was about to become my problem whether I wanted it or not. I called the bank. The woman on the phone confirmed it calmly, like she was reading the weather. Yes, the box existed. Yes, it had been active for decades. Yes, my name was on it. When was I added? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I heard the sound of typing. According to our records, you were added as a secondary holder in 1992. We'd only been married 5 years. I was 28 years old. Still believed that marriage meant partnership, that joint decisions were actually joint, that when someone asked you to sign something, they were being transparent about what it meant. I'd signed my name to something I didn't understand, and it had been sitting in a vault for over 30 years, waiting. What's in it? I asked. Ma'am, I don't have access to that information. The contents of a safe deposit box are private. But it's mine now. Right? You have access rights, yes. Would you like to schedule an appointment? She asked when I wanted to come in. I looked at the calendar and chose the first available appointment, because once you realize a door has been locked in your life for years, you don't sleep until you know what's behind it. Tuesday, she said. 2 p.m. Of course. The same time he'd always gone. I almost laughed. Almost. Because even in death, he was still dictating the terms. I hung up the phone and sat there, staring at the wall, finally understanding one thing. Whatever was in that box was the real reason my ex-husband never missed a Tuesday. And whatever it was, he never intended for me to see it while he was alive. The days leading up to that appointment felt longer than they should have. I couldn't focus. Couldn't eat properly. Couldn't stop running through possibilities in my mind, each one worse than the last. Was it money? Hidden accounts? Evidence of affairs? Proof of something illegal? Was it something that would destroy the memory of him? Or was it something that would destroy me? I told myself I was overreacting. That it was probably nothing. Just paperwork. Old documents. Boring financial records he was too controlling to throw away. But I didn't believe that. Because you don't guard boring paperwork for 33 years. You don't build your entire life around protecting something mundane. You don't die on the way to maintain something that doesn't matter. The night before the appointment, I barely slept. I kept thinking about that box, sitting in the dark vault of that bank, waiting for someone to finally open it. Waiting for me. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. He'd always known this moment would come. He'd known that one day, he wouldn't be able to make that Tuesday appointment. That one day, the box would pass to me. That one day, I'd have to see whatever he'd been hiding. And he'd done it anyway. He'd kept my name on it. He'd kept the secret. He'd kept control, even knowing it would end like this. That's not protection. That's a trap. If paperwork ever revealed a truth you were never meant to find, comment the documents. Because some secrets aren't meant to stay buried. They're meant to detonate. And sometimes, the person who set the timer is long gone by the time it goes off. The bank felt colder than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Glass walls. Polished floors. Everything designed to feel transparent, which is ironic considering how much gets hidden in places like that. A manager met me at the front. She already knew my name. She already knew why I was there. People always do when death is involved. She offered condolences. I nodded. She led me past a series of locked doors and down a quiet hallway that smelled faintly of metal and disinfectant. The vault was exactly what you'd expect. Rows of identical steel boxes, stacked and numbered like they were all interchangeable. She opened one. Not with one key. With two. Hers, and mine. That moment landed heavier than I expected. Because no matter how long you've been divorced, seeing your name still unlock someone else's secrets does something to you. It reminds you that separation is sometimes just an illusion. That you can move out, sign papers, rebuild your life, and still be tethered to someone in ways you never agreed to. She handed me the box and gave me privacy. The room was small. Windowless. Just a table, a chair, and silence so thick it felt like pressure in my ears. I set the box on the small table and just looked at it. 33 years of Tuesdays fit inside that rectangle. I don't know how long I sat there before I actually touched it. Could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time does strange things when you're about to cross a line you can't uncross. My hands were steady when I lifted the lid. I expected them to shake, but they didn't. Maybe because some part of me had been preparing for this moment since the day I realized he had parts of his life I wasn't allowed to see. When I finally opened it, there was no chaos. No loose cash. No dramatic reveal. Just folders. Neatly labeled. Methodical. Calm. The kind of calm that tells you someone spent a long time making sure nothing would look suspicious. Everything was color-coded. Tabs labeled by year. Dates written in his careful handwriting, the same script I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists and divorce papers. It looked professional. Organized. Responsible. Exactly like him. That should have been my first warning. Because people who hide things don't usually hide them in chaos. They hide them in order. They make the dangerous stuff look boring. The shameful stuff look routine. The illegal stuff look like paperwork you'd be too tired to read all the way through. I reached for the first folder, telling myself this would explain everything in a clean, logical way. It didn't. The first folder was labeled Insurance. I opened it expecting policies. Maybe a life insurance document I should have known about. Something that would actually help me sort through the mess he'd left behind. What I found instead were receipts. Not for insurance premiums. For payments. Repeated payments. Same amounts. Same intervals. Going back years. To a name I didn't recognize. A woman's name. My stomach dropped. I flipped through the pages, faster now, feeling my pulse start to climb. There were dozens of them. Monthly payments. Never late. Never missed. And then I saw the notes he'd written in the margins. Per agreement. Ongoing obligation. Non-negotiable. I sat back in the chair, staring at the folder, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. Was this blackmail? An affair? A second family? I didn't know yet. But I knew this wasn't insurance. This was something he'd been paying to keep quiet. I reached for the second folder. Then the third. Each one revealed another layer. Bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of. Some with balances. Some overdrawn. Some closed years ago but still generating penalties because no one had properly dissolved them. Legal documents with both our names on them, dated from the early years of our marriage when I still signed whatever he put in front of me without asking questions. Loan agreements. Investment forms. Property deeds for places I'd never seen. And then I found the envelope. Unmarked. Sealed. Sitting at the bottom of the box like it had been waiting for me. I held it for a long time before I opened it. Because something about it felt different. Final. Like this was the thing he really didn't want me to see. Inside were letters. Handwritten. Not by him. From someone else. Someone who called him by a name I'd never heard him use. Someone who referenced years and events and promises I knew nothing about. Someone who had been part of his life long before I was. And maybe long after. I read the first letter. Then the second. And by the third, I understood. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about secrets. It was about a whole other life. One he'd been maintaining in parallel to ours. One that required weekly attention, careful management, and absolute silence. One that explained why Tuesday at 2 p.m. was non-negotiable. Because he wasn't just going to the bank. He was maintaining a system. A system that kept two worlds from colliding. Until now. It was only the beginning. And I hadn't even touched the worst part yet. Because at the very bottom of the box, underneath everything else, was a single photograph. Face down. Like he couldn't bear to look at it but couldn't bring himself to destroy it either. I didn't pick it up right away. I just stared at the back of it, knowing that once I turned it over, once I saw what he'd been protecting all these years, there would be no going back. No pretending I didn't know. No telling myself it wasn't that bad. Just truth. Raw and irreversible. If someone's life always looked perfectly organized on the outside, comment, looked clean. Because the most dangerous secrets aren't the messy ones. They're the ones filed under routine. The first folder wasn't dramatic. That almost fooled me. It was labeled like something ordinary. Financial. Neutral. Boring, even. The kind of word you'd use if you didn't want attention drawn to it. Inside were statements. Not one account. Multiple. Accounts I didn't recognize. Investments I'd never heard discussed. Numbers that didn't line up with the story I'd been told for years. At first, I assumed I just didn't understand them. That familiar reflex kicked in. He was better with money than me. He handled these things. There must be an explanation. That's what decades of conditioning does to you. It trains you to doubt yourself first. To assume competence in the other person even when the evidence says otherwise. To believe that if something doesn't make sense, it's because you're not smart enough to understand it. Not because you're being lied to. But the deeper I went, the worse it got. Losses stacked on losses. Withdrawals without deposits. Accounts opened and closed like someone panicking, trying to outrun something catching up fast. One account showed regular transfers out. Thousands at a time. No explanation. No corresponding income to cover it. Another account had been overdrawn for months before it was finally closed, racking up fees that compounded into something truly ugly. A third account had his signature on documents dated 2 years after our divorce, but my name was still listed as a guarantor. Somehow, without my knowledge, without my consent, I was still legally tied to his decisions. I felt my throat tighten. Because this wasn't just financial mismanagement. This was reckless. Desperate. And every single account had one thing in common. His name. Only his. Except when it came to liability. Then, suddenly, mine appeared too. I could feel my breathing getting shallow. That's when the tightness started in my chest. Because if this was all under control, there wouldn't be this much scrambling. This much movement. This much quiet damage happening in the background while he smiled and told me not to worry about it. This wasn't strategy. It was damage control. Years of it. Maybe decades. He hadn't been managing things. He'd been juggling them. Moving money around like shells in a con game, hoping nothing would collapse before he could fix it. Except he never fixed it. He just kept it spinning. And every Tuesday at 2 p.m., he came here to make sure the plates stayed in the air for one more week. I closed that folder and sat back, pressing my palms flat against the cold table, trying to steady myself. Telling myself this was probably the worst of it. That the rest would just be more of the same. More accounts. More mistakes. More evidence that the man who presented himself as responsible was actually just really good at hiding chaos. I was wrong. Because the next folder wasn't labeled with something neutral. It was labeled with a date. A specific date. One I recognized immediately. The year we got married. My hands hesitated before opening it. Some part of me already knew. Already understood that whatever was inside was going to reframe everything I thought I knew about my own life. Inside were documents. Old ones. Yellowed at the edges. Signed in ink that had faded but was still legible. Loan documents. Not for a house. Not for a car. For debts. Debts that predated our marriage. Debts he'd brought into the relationship and never mentioned. Debts that, according to the paperwork, became partially mine the moment I signed our marriage certificate. I read through them slowly, my stomach sinking with every page. He'd owed money before we even met. Significant money. To multiple people. Some of it legitimate. Some of it, less so. And he'd spent the first decade of our marriage not paying them off. Just managing them. Shuffling them. Keeping them quiet. There were payment plans that had lapsed. Renegotiations that had failed. Letters from creditors that got more threatening over time before suddenly stopping. Not because the debts were paid. Because he'd found other ways to make them disappear. Temporarily. And that's when I found the second set of documents. The ones that explained the letters I'd seen earlier. The woman's name. The monthly payments that never stopped. She wasn't a mistress. She was a creditor. Or more accurately, someone he'd borrowed from when the bank stopped lending. Someone who didn't operate through official channels. Someone who expected to be paid, every month, without fail, or there would be consequences. And he'd been paying her. For over 20 years. With money that should have been ours. With money that came from accounts that had my name buried somewhere in the fine print. I sat there, staring at the documents, feeling something crack open inside me. Not sadness. Rage. Because this explained everything. Why he was so defensive about money. Why he never wanted me involved in financial decisions. Why he acted like I was being unreasonable for asking basic questions about our accounts. It wasn't about control. It was about concealment. He wasn't protecting me from complexity. He was protecting himself from accountability. Every, "I've got it handled," was a lie. Every, "Trust me," was a deflection. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. was another week of keeping the truth at bay. And now, sitting in this cold vault with his secrets spread out in front of me, I finally understood. The next folder didn't just explain his Tuesdays. It explained why he never wanted me asking questions at all. Because the questions would have led here. To proof. To evidence. To the truth that the man who seemed so stable, so dependable, so in control, was actually drowning. And he'd been drowning for so long that he'd forgotten there was any other way to live. He just kept swimming. Kept moving. Kept going to the bank every Tuesday. Until the day he couldn't anymore. And then it all became mine. If you've ever realized too late that, "I've got it handled," actually meant, "I'm hiding something," comment, "Now I see." Because some people don't ask for help. They just make sure no one can see them sinking. The next folder had my name on it. Not his. Mine. I remember staring at it, actually smiling for a second, because my brain tried to protect me. Maybe this is just old paperwork. Maybe this is something we both signed years ago. Maybe it's tax documents or insurance forms or something completely benign that he filed under my name for organizational purposes. That smile disappeared the moment I opened it. Credit cards. Applications. Statements. all in my name. Cards I had never applied for. Accounts I had never used. Balances I had never seen. Every page carried my personal information. My social security number. My address from years ago. My mother's maiden name. And signatures that looked like mine, but weren't. Close. Practiced. Good enough to pass a quick verification. But not mine. That was the moment the air left the room. I couldn't breathe properly. Couldn't think straight. My eyes kept scanning the pages, looking for some explanation that would make this okay, make this a misunderstanding, make this anything other than what it so clearly was. But there was no other explanation. This wasn't mismanagement. This wasn't a bad investment. This wasn't someone who made a mistake and panicked. This was identity theft. Quiet. Methodical. Intentional. The man I had been married to for years had taken out debt in my name without my knowledge and maxed it out while I slept next to him at night. While I trusted him. While I believed he's handling it meant safety. The first card had been opened in 2001. Balance, $8,742. Never paid off. Sent to collections in 2004. The second card, 2005. Balance, $12,300. Minimum payments made for 2 years, then nothing. A third. A fourth. A fifth. Each one opened when he needed money he didn't have. Each one used until it was worthless. Each one abandoned when the bills started coming. And my name was on every single one. I flipped through the statements, my hands shaking now, watching my credit score get destroyed in real time across years of paperwork. Late payments. Defaults. Collections notices sent to addresses I hadn't lived at in decades. No wonder I'd had trouble getting approved for things after the divorce. No wonder my interest rates were higher than they should have been. No wonder that apartment application got rejected. I'd thought it was just bad luck. It wasn't luck. It was sabotage. He had buried me financially and then acted surprised when I struggled. Had probably even felt superior about it. The responsible one. The one who handled things. The one who shook his head at my financial difficulties like they were my fault. While he was the one who caused them. I sat there holding those papers and felt something snap cleanly inside me. Not sadness. Not even rage anymore. Something colder. Clarity. Because money can be rebuilt. Credit can be repaired. Debt can be disputed. Trust can't. And once you realize someone was willing to erase you financially to save themselves, the story changes forever. Every kind word recontextualizes. Every "I love you" becomes suspect. Every moment of supposed partnership reveals itself as performance. Because love doesn't do this. Love doesn't steal your identity to cover its own mistakes. Love doesn't destroy your future to buy itself time. Love doesn't sit across from you at breakfast, kiss you goodbye, and then go to the bank to make sure you never find out what it's been doing in your name. I thought about all those years. All those conversations where he made me feel small for asking about money. Made me feel stupid for not understanding. Made me feel like I was the problem. And the whole time, he was committing fraud. Against me. The person who trusted him most. I looked back at the box. There was still more inside. I hadn't even reached the bottom yet. But I already knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever this was, it wasn't love. It was something else entirely. Something that wore love's face and spoke love's words but acted with the cold calculation of someone who saw other people as resources to be used up. And I had been married to it. I had shared a bed with it. I had signed my name next to it on a marriage certificate and believed, truly believed, that we were partners. We weren't partners. I was collateral. And every Tuesday at 2 p.m. for 33 years, he came to this bank to make sure I stayed that way. The worst part? He almost succeeded. If he hadn't died. If he'd had a few more years. If that heart attack hadn't happened on a Tuesday afternoon in the parking lot of this very building. I never would have known. I would have kept living my life, wondering why things felt hard, why money felt tight, why opportunities seemed to slip through my fingers. Never knowing that someone I loved had spent decades making sure they would. If you didn't realize this kind of behavior is abuse until right now, comment, this counts. Because abuse isn't always loud. Sometimes it's methodical. Sometimes it wears a suit and goes to the bank every Tuesday. Sometimes it keeps perfect records of the damage it's doing. And sometimes, the person being destroyed is the last one to know. At the bottom of the box was an envelope. Thicker than the rest. Cream-colored. My name written in his handwriting. That stopped me. Because forged signatures are one thing. Seeing the real handwriting of someone you once loved is another. It's personal. Intimate. The kind of thing that reminds you this wasn't some stranger who did this to you. It was someone who knew how you took your coffee. Who knew which side of the bed you slept on. Who knew the sound of your laugh and the way you cried. Someone who chose to hurt you anyway. I didn't open it right away. I just held it, feeling the weight of it, knowing that whatever was inside had been written deliberately. Planned. Saved for a moment like this. I already knew what it would be. Not the details, but the tone. I'd lived with him long enough to recognize it. Explanations dressed up as remorse. Fear disguised as love. Responsibility softened into regret. The kind of letter that says, "I'm sorry," but really means, "I need you to understand why I had no choice." I opened it anyway. Because even when you know you're about to read something that will hurt, some part of you still hopes you're wrong. Still hopes there's an explanation that will make sense. Still hopes that the person you loved wasn't capable of what all the evidence says they were. The letter was dated 5 years ago. Written not long after the divorce was finalized. His handwriting was neat. Controlled. The same careful script he'd always had, the one that made everything look official and thought through. He wrote that he was sorry. That 5 years ago he'd made a decision he thought would fix everything. That he kept going to the bank every Tuesday trying to restructure, trying to buy time, trying to fix what he'd broken before anyone noticed. He said he did it for me. That he didn't want me to worry. That he didn't want to disappoint me. That he loved me. I almost laughed at that line. Because if that's what love looked like, I never wanted to see it again. And then he admitted it. Plainly. Almost casually. That he used my name. That he took out the cards. That he put the house at risk. That he opened accounts I didn't know about and defaulted on loans I never agreed to. Because he believed he could fix it before I ever found out. He called it temporary. He called it necessary. He called it the only option. What he didn't call it was what it actually was. Theft. Betrayal. A calculated decision to sacrifice my financial future so he could postpone his own reckoning. The letter went on. He explained the spiral. How one bad investment led to another. How he tried to recover the losses but only made them worse. How the debt grew faster than he could manage it. How he felt trapped. And how, in his desperation, he decided that using my identity was less risky than facing the consequences himself. He wrote that he planned to pay it all back. That he was working on it. That every Tuesday, he was moving pieces around, trying to make it right. That he just needed more time. But time ran out. And instead of fixing anything, he just left me with the wreckage. That letter didn't make me cry. It made me cold. Because apologies that arrive after the damage is done aren't apologies. They're explanations written for the person who caused the harm, not the person who has to live with it. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. Sorry that death revealed what decades of careful maintenance had hidden. Sorry that he couldn't keep controlling the narrative from beyond the grave. And that line, the one where he said he did it for me? That was the cruelest part. Because people who hurt you will always find a way to make it sound like they were protecting you. Like they were shouldering a burden so you wouldn't have to. Like their betrayal was actually a kind of sacrifice. But protection doesn't look like fraud. Sacrifice doesn't look like theft. Love doesn't look like lying to someone's face for decades while systematically destroying their financial credibility behind their back. That's not love. That's control with a better marketing strategy. I folded the letter carefully and put it back. Not because I forgave him. Not because I understood his reasoning. But because I understood him. I understood that he was someone who, when faced with a choice between his comfort and my safety, chose himself every single time. Someone who valued his image more than my reality. Someone who would rather commit fraud than admit he needed help. Someone who loved the idea of being responsible more than he cared about actually being trustworthy. And understanding didn't change a single consequence. It didn't erase the debt. It didn't repair my credit. It didn't give me back the years I spent believing I was building a life with a partner when I was actually just collateral in someone else's con. Understanding just meant I finally saw it clearly. No more excuses. No more benefit of the doubt. No more wondering if maybe I'd been too hard on him, too suspicious, too unwilling to trust. I'd trusted plenty. And he'd used every ounce of that trust to bury me. I closed the box. Sat back in that small, cold room. And felt something settle in my chest that hadn't been there before. Not peace. But clarity. The kind that comes when you stop asking, why, and start asking, what now? Because the why doesn't matter anymore. He's gone. The damage is done. And no letter, no matter how carefully written, no matter how remorseful it sounds, changes the fact that I'm the one who has to clean this up. Not him. Me. The person he claimed to love. The person he swore he was protecting. The person whose name he stole and whose future he sold to buy himself a little more time. If someone ever hurt you and called it love, comment, no excuse. Because real love doesn't require forgery. Real love doesn't hide in safe deposit boxes. Real love doesn't write apology letters it never plans to send. Real love shows up. Tells the truth. Takes responsibility. And when it can't do those things, it doesn't call itself love. It just admits what it actually is. I didn't leave the bank angry. I left focused. Because once you see something that clearly, emotion becomes a distraction. What I needed wasn't outrage. It was action. Rage burns hot and fast, but it doesn't get you through the practical hell of disputing fraudulent accounts, filing police reports, and untangling decades of financial deception. Focus does. So I walked out of that vault, handed back my key, and drove home with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not peace. Not closure. Just the cold, clean understanding of what needed to happen next. The first call I made was to a lawyer. Not for revenge. For protection. Because when someone commits identity theft, even if they're dead, the consequences don't die with them. The debts are still real. The damage is still active. And without proper documentation and legal intervention, those consequences land on you. The lawyer listened without interrupting. Asked for copies of everything. Told me this was worse than most cases she'd seen because of how long it had gone on, how methodical it was, how much my ex-husband had known exactly what he was doing. This wasn't desperation, she said. This was planning. I already knew that. But hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a different way. The second call I made was to my son. And that's where things got harder. He came over that evening, sat at the kitchen table, and watched his face change as he went through the copies I'd brought home. Confusion first. The furrowed brow. The way he kept flipping back to earlier pages like he'd missed something. Then disbelief. The way his mouth opened slightly, the way he shook his head like he could physically reject what he was reading. Then that hollow look people get when something they trusted collapses all at once. This is bad, he said quietly. I nodded. I know. He sat there for a long time, just staring at the papers spread across the table. His father's handwriting. His father's crimes. His father's letter trying to justify it all. What are you going to do? He finally asked. Fix it, I said. Report it. Protect myself. He nodded slowly. Okay. And I could see him trying. Trying to reconcile the man who taught him how to change a tire with the man who stole his mother's identity. Trying to hold both truths at the same time without letting either one go. It was painful to watch. But he was trying. That mattered. But the real fracture didn't come from him. It came from my daughter. When I told her what I'd found, there was a long silence on the phone. The kind that tells you the person on the other end is choosing which version of reality they can survive. I heard her breathing. Heard the hesitation. Finally, she said it. Dad wouldn't do that. Not didn't. Wouldn't. Present tense. Absolute. Defensive. Because for her, the man who taught her to ride a bike and helped with homework and showed up at every recital couldn't exist in the same body as the man who forged signatures and destroyed lives. Those two versions of him couldn't coexist. And if they couldn't both be true, she was going to choose the one that didn't hurt. I told her I had proof. Bank records. His own letter. Documentation that left no room for interpretation. She didn't want to see them. I don't need to see anything, she said, voice tight. I know who my father was. So do I said quietly. And I'm telling you what he did. She got defensive then. Told me grief does strange things to people. That I was hurting and looking for someone to blame. That I was misinterpreting things. That I was taking coincidences and building conspiracy theories. That I was tearing down his memory. And just like that, I became the problem. Not him. Me. The person who told the truth became the villain. The person who revealed the damage became the one causing it. That's the part no one warns you about. Sometimes telling the truth doesn't make you brave. It makes you lonely. Because lies are comforting. They're soft. They're familiar. They let people sleep at night. Truth is disruptive. Truth demands you rearrange everything you thought you knew. Truth asks you to sit with discomfort and ambiguity and the horrible reality that someone you loved was also someone who caused harm. And when someone has built their sense of safety on a story, they will protect that story at all costs, even if it means losing you. My daughter couldn't afford to believe me. Not because I was lying. But because believing me would mean admitting her father wasn't who she thought he was. And that loss felt bigger to her than the loss of our relationship. So she chose him. The memory of him. The sanitized, protected version that didn't include fraud or theft or decades of deception. She chose the story over the truth. And I had to let her. I hung up the phone knowing something important had shifted. Not just in my finances. In my family. My son was struggling but present. My daughter was gone. Not physically. But emotionally. She stopped answering my calls. Stopped responding to texts. Started telling other family members her own version of events. One where I was bitter and vindictive and making things up to hurt a man who couldn't defend himself. And some of them believed her. Because it's easier to believe that one person is overreacting than to believe that someone everyone loved was capable of systematic, long-term abuse. It's easier to blame the whistleblower than interrogate the crime. So I became isolated. Not by choice. But by consequence. The consequence of refusing to participate in a lie just because it was more comfortable than the truth. And here's what I learned. Some people will love you fiercely right up until the moment you ask them to see something they don't want to see. Then that love becomes conditional. It becomes contingent on your willingness to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to protect the story even when the story is killing you. And if you won't do that, if you insist on truth even when it's inconvenient, even when it's painful, even when it costs you relationships you thought were permanent, you become the problem. Not the person who lied. Not the person who stole. Not the person who spent 33 years carefully constructing a double life. You. For having the audacity to say it out loud. If telling the truth ever made you the villain, comment the price. Because some truths cost you everything. And you tell them anyway. Not because you want to. But because living in someone else's lie is a different kind of death. And you've already died enough. I thought the damage had a boundary. I really did. I believed that whatever he'd done, whatever mess I was now standing in, it ended with me. That I was the final stop. The last person to pay for his secrecy. That the box at the bank held the full scope of it. That once I'd seen everything in that vault, I'd seen everything there was to see. That illusion lasted exactly 4 days. My phone rang late in the evening. I almost didn't answer because I already felt emptied out, like there was nothing left to process. Like I'd reached the bottom of the damage and all that was left was the slow, painful work of climbing back up. But when I saw my daughter's name, I picked up. She hadn't called since our argument. Since she'd accused me of destroying her father's memory. since she'd chosen the story over the truth. I braced myself for another fight. But she didn't start angry. She started small. Quiet. Mom. I went to the bank today. My stomach dropped before she said anything else. Because I knew that tone. The one that comes right before your entire world reconfigures. The one that sounds like someone standing in the ruins of something they used to believe in. I asked to see Dad's records. The ones you mentioned. I wanted to prove you were wrong. I didn't say anything. Just waited. There was a pause. Then a breath that shook. You weren't wrong. I closed my eyes. They pulled up my information, she continued, voice barely steady. Because my name was linked to his. I didn't ask them to. They said there was an account associated with both of us and did I want to review it. Another pause. I didn't know what they were talking about. She told me they found a credit card in her name. Opened years ago. Charges she didn't recognize. Monthly payments that had been made, sometimes, but not enough to ever pay it down. A balance that made her lightheaded. $23,000. How, she whispered. How did I not know? I didn't have a good answer. Because the same way I didn't know. The same way none of us knew. Because he was careful. Methodical. Because he opened accounts using addresses we didn't live at anymore. Because he intercepted statements. Because he made minimum payments just often enough to keep things from exploding. Until they did. Her credit was already showing damage she couldn't explain until that moment. Applications denied. Interest rates higher than they should be. A score that didn't match her actual financial behavior. She'd thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. There's more, she said, and I heard her voice crack. They asked if I wanted to review anything else linked to the family. And there were other things, Mom. Accounts. Loans. Things with my brother's information. Things with my social security number from when I was still a minor. That's when the pattern finally snapped into focus. It hadn't been a single mistake. It hadn't been desperation in one bad year. It hadn't even been about me. It had been systematic. A strategy. When my credit stopped being useful, when my name stopped opening doors, he didn't stop. He just moved on to the next name. Our children. The people he was supposed to protect. He used them the same way he used me. As collateral. As tools. As solutions to problems he refused to face honestly. And he did it quietly, incrementally, in ways that wouldn't be discovered until long after the damage had been done. My son's name was on a loan for a car he'd never owned. My daughter's identity had been used to open credit lines she'd never requested. Both of them had been paying, indirectly, for their father's secrets without ever knowing it. Both of them were walking around with damaged credit, denied opportunities, wondering why things felt harder than they should. And the whole time, he'd been at the bank every Tuesday, managing it. Not fixing it. Managing it. Keeping it alive. Keeping it hidden. Keeping all of us tethered to his choices without our knowledge or consent. And the cruelest part is this. He didn't do it because he didn't love us. He did it because he loved control more. Because admitting he needed help would have meant giving up the image of being the person who handled things. Because asking for support would have meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant losing the power dynamic he'd spent decades constructing. So instead, he chose to sacrifice us. Quietly. Methodically. While still playing the role of protector. On that call, my daughter cried in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Grief mixed with betrayal. The kind that comes from realizing the person who was supposed to keep you safe was the one putting you in danger. That the man who lectured about responsibility was committing fraud in your name. That love, as he defined it, included theft. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." "It's okay," I said, though it wasn't really okay. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was that she was here. That she was seeing it. That we were finally on the same side of the truth. "What do we do?" she asked. "We fix it," I said. "Together. We document everything. We report everything. We protect ourselves and each other." "And Dad?" I paused. Because how do you answer that? How do you tell your child that the parent they loved was also the parent who hurt them? That both things are true and neither one cancels the other out? "Your father made choices," I said carefully. "Choices that hurt all of us. That doesn't mean he didn't love you. But it does mean his love wasn't enough to stop him from hurting you." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I don't know how to feel about him anymore." "You don't have to know right now," I said. "You just have to deal with what he left behind." That night, there was no more denial in our family. Only reckoning. My son came over the next day. We sat at the table, all three of us, and went through everything. Every account. Every fraudulent card. Every forged signature. We made copies. Filed reports. Started the long, exhausting process of proving we were victims of someone we'd loved. And somewhere in that process, something shifted. We weren't just cleaning up his mess. We were reclaiming ourselves. Our names. Our identities. Our right to exist without being used as leverage in someone else's desperation. It was painful. Humiliating. Exhausting. But we were doing it together. And that mattered more than I can explain. Because he tried to isolate us. To keep us from comparing notes. To make sure each of us thought our struggle was individual, not systemic. But now we saw the pattern. And seeing it together made us stronger than his secrets ever were. If you realized too late that it wasn't just you, comment, "Not alone." Because sometimes the worst part of abuse isn't that it happened. It's that you thought you were the only one. And the moment you realize you weren't, that others were hurt the same way, that the pattern was bigger than you knew, everything changes. Not because it makes the pain less, but because it makes the truth undeniable. And the truth, no matter how painful, is the only place healing can start. The fight didn't look dramatic. No shouting. No revenge. No big speeches. Just paperwork. Endless, soul-crushing paperwork. Forms that asked the same questions 17 different ways. Disputes that required documentation I didn't have. Affidavits swearing to facts I was still processing emotionally. Phone calls with customer service representatives who read from scripts and transferred me to departments that transferred me back. The lawyer was direct. Clear. Almost blunt. "This is fraud," she said. "And it's going to take time. Not weeks. Years. Because when someone spends decades building a web of deception, you don't untangle it quickly. You do it one thread at a time, proving over and over that you didn't consent, didn't benefit, didn't know. Proving, essentially, that you were a victim. Which meant reliving it. Explaining it. Justifying why you didn't notice sooner, didn't ask more questions, didn't protect yourself better. It was exhausting in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not physically. Existentially. Time was something I suddenly had whether I wanted it or not. Because while the legal process ground forward at its own glacial pace, life didn't stop. Bills still came. Rent still needed paying. Food still needed buying. And my savings, what little I had, were already stretched thin. I went back to work at an age when I thought I was finished working. Not because I wanted fulfillment or purpose or something to do with my days. But because survival doesn't wait for emotional readiness. I took a job that paid modestly. Retail. Customer service. The kind of work where you smile even when you don't feel like it and help people find things they're looking for. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what I'd imagined for this stage of my life. But it was mine. Honest. Simple. No hidden agendas. No one forging my signature while I slept. I learned new systems. Memorized inventory. Stood on my feet all day and came home tired in a way that felt honest. Not drained from emotional manipulation. Not exhausted from trying to decode half-truths. Just physically tired from work that had a clear beginning and end. There was something stabilizing about that. My daughter filed her own fraud reports. Spent hours on the phone with credit bureaus, her voice getting stronger each time. Learning to advocate for herself in ways she'd never had to before. My son helped organize documents. Created spreadsheets tracking every account, every dispute, every piece of correspondence. Brought order to chaos in a way that reminded me he'd inherited his father's organizational skills, just chose to use them honestly. For the first time in years, everything was on the table. No secrets. No locked doors. No gatekeeper deciding what information we deserved to have. No one saying, "Don't worry, I've got it." And something unexpected happened. As the numbers slowly stabilized, so did I. It wasn't linear. Some days I'd get a letter confirming an account had been removed from my credit report and I'd feel lighter. Other days I'd discover another charge I hadn't known about and feel like I was back at the beginning. But the trajectory was clear. Forward. Slowly, painfully, incrementally forward. Because control doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from not being kept in the dark. It comes from having access to your own information. It comes from being able to ask questions without being made to feel stupid for asking. It comes from transparency, even when the truth is ugly. Every small win mattered. Every debt removed felt like oxygen. Every letter confirming a correction felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I didn't know had been taken. My credit score started climbing. Not dramatically, but consistently. 5 points one month. 12 the next. Then 20. Each increase felt like proof that I existed independently of his choices. That my identity wasn't permanently welded to his damage. That I could recover. I wasn't rebuilding the life I had. That life had been built on a foundation of lies. Rebuilding it would have meant reconstructing the same instability, the same blind trust, the same willingness to accept, "I've got it," as a complete answer. I was building one I actually understood. Smaller. Simpler. More transparent. A life where I knew where my money went. Where my name was only on things I'd actually signed. Where I could look at a bank statement without feeling dread. A life where boring felt like safety instead of ignorance. My daughter started doing the same. Got her own apartment. Opened accounts only she had access to. Started checking her credit regularly, something she'd never thought to do before. My son refinanced things in his name only. Set up alerts. Built systems to catch irregularities early. We were all learning the same lesson, just from different angles. That vigilance isn't paranoia. That boundaries aren't cruelty. That asking questions doesn't make you difficult, it makes you responsible. We didn't talk about it explicitly, but I could see it happening. We were unlearning the patterns he'd taught us. The ones that said trust meant not asking questions. That love meant giving someone unlimited access. That family meant letting things slide. We were learning new ones. That trust is earned, not assumed. That love includes accountability. That family means protecting each other, not protecting secrets. It was quiet work. Unglamorous. No one was cheering us on. No one posted about our small victories on social media. No one wrote articles about how we were rebuilding. We just did it. One form at a time. One corrected account at a time. One conversation at a time. Step by step. And some days that felt like enough. If you're rebuilding quietly while no one is clapping, comment, "step by step." Because healing doesn't usually look like a makeover montage. It looks like showing up to work when you're tired. It looks like filling out the same form for the third time because the first two got lost. It looks like choosing to try again even when progress feels invisible. It looks like building something stable out of wreckage, knowing most people will never see the foundation you're laying. But you see it. And that's what matters. Not the applause. The fact that you're still building. What surprised me wasn't the anger fading. It was what replaced it. I didn't wake up one day feeling healed. There was no moment where everything clicked and the past stopped hurting. No epiphany that made the betrayal suddenly make sense or feel okay. What happened was slower, quieter, and more permanent. I started noticing patterns. Not just in my own story, but in other people's. Women I worked with. Friends of friends. Casual conversations at the break room table or waiting in line at the grocery store that suddenly paused when money came up. The same phrases repeated again and again. "He handles all that. I'm just not good with numbers. It's easier if one person takes care of it. I don't really know what we have, but he says we're fine." I tried to ask once, but he got annoyed. I'd said those things once too. Had believed them. Had even felt grateful for them, like I was being relieved of a burden instead of being locked out of my own life. So when someone finally asked me, carefully, almost apologetically, how I'd known something was wrong, I didn't give them a dramatic answer. I didn't tell them about the vault or the letters or the fraud. Not at first. I told them the truth. I didn't know. Not for a long time. But looking back, I just felt small around it. She nodded slowly, like I'd said something she'd been thinking but hadn't named. Small how? Like I wasn't smart enough to understand. Like asking questions made me difficult. Like trusting him was easier than fighting to be included. Her face changed. That look people get when something they've been carrying finally has words. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Yeah, I know that feeling." That opened the door. One conversation turned into another. Then another. Women started asking me questions. Not about my ex-husband specifically, but about their own situations. About accounts they couldn't access. About passwords they didn't have. About financial decisions made without them. About the feeling that something wasn't right but not having proof, just instinct. Soon, people were asking real questions. About whether they should have access to all accounts. About whether "I've got it handled" was ever a good enough answer. About whether love should ever require blindness. About whether financial control was a form of abuse they'd never considered. I wasn't trying to start anything. I wasn't trying to lead a movement or become some kind of advocate. I was just done staying quiet. Done pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Done protecting the comfort of people who weren't protecting me. And that's when it hit me. What he did to me mattered. It was real. It was damaging. It was wrong. But what I did after mattered more. Because I could have stayed silent. Could have fixed my own situation privately and moved on. Could have kept the story small and contained, just another personal tragedy no one else needed to know about. But I didn't. Not out of revenge. Out of responsibility. Because every time I heard another woman say, "He handles all that," with that same uncertain tone I used to have, I saw myself. And I knew what could be waiting for her. Not always fraud. Not always theft. But the vulnerability that comes from trusting someone else with total control over your financial reality. The powerlessness that comes from not knowing what you have, what you owe, what you're tied to. The risk that comes from believing partnership means one person has all the information and the other person just has faith. I didn't get justice in the way movies promise. I didn't get my years back. I didn't get an apology that fixed anything. I didn't get to confront him, to hear him admit what he'd done, to watch him face consequences while he was still alive to feel them. What I got was clarity. And clarity is dangerous in the best possible way. Because once you see clearly, you can't be controlled the same way again. You can't be convinced that asking questions makes you difficult. You can't be persuaded that ignorance is a form of trust. You can't be told that partnership means one person decides and the other person accepts. Once you see the pattern, you see it everywhere. In relationships where one person controls all the money. In marriages where one person doesn't even know what accounts exist. In families where financial transparency is treated like betrayal instead of basic respect. In situations where "I've got it handled" is used as a shield against accountability. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to thinking it's normal. You can't go back to thinking it's love. My daughter sees it now too. Watches her friends' relationships with different eyes. Asks questions she never would have asked before. My son does the same. Insists on transparency in his own relationship. Treats financial access as a baseline requirement, not a privilege to be earned. We're different now. Not broken. Not bitter. Just clear. About what we'll accept. About what we deserve. About what actual partnership looks like. And that clarity, that hard one, painful, expensive clarity, is the thing I'm most grateful for. Not because it feels good. but because it's real. And real is something I can build on. Real doesn't collapse when you ask questions. Real doesn't hide in safe deposit boxes. Real doesn't require you to stay small to survive. If this story made something click for you, even uncomfortably, comment, "I see now." Because sometimes the most important thing isn't healing from what happened. It's seeing clearly enough to make sure it doesn't happen again. Not just to you. To anyone. And if my story, this long, painful, expensive story, can help even one person ask the questions I didn't ask, demand the access I didn't demand, recognize the patterns I didn't recognize until it was too late, then maybe every Tuesday he spent at that bank, every secret he kept, every lie he told, maybe it all means something after all. Not because he intended it to, but because I refuse to let it end with silence. If you take nothing else from this story, take this. Love is not secrecy. Protection is not control. And trust does not mean blindness. For 33 years, I believed that asking fewer questions made me a good partner. That letting someone else handle things was maturity. That peace meant not pushing where I wasn't invited. It doesn't. Peace built on silence is just delayed damage. If someone tells you they love you but won't let you see the accounts, won't explain the routine, won't answer basic questions about your money, that's not trust. That's power imbalance. And power, when left unchecked, always finds a way to abuse itself. If you're watching this and something in your chest feels tight, listen to that. If you've had that quiet thought of, something's off, but talked yourself out of it, stop doing that. Look. Ask. Verify. The worst thing that happens if you're wrong is an uncomfortable conversation. The worst thing that happens if you're right is losing everything without ever knowing why. I froze when I found out the truth. But freezing wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment I stopped letting someone else write it. If this story felt familiar in any way, don't keep scrolling. Comment, check the accounts. Someone else needs to see they're not imagining it.